and then the path. So @/components/rounded card. Now let's use this. So within this div, I'm going to say rounded card like an HTML. And to that, I just want to pass maybe view course. And let's use this booking item now in our app.view. So there, I want to import that booking item, and this should be @/components/booking item.view. And now I also want to show it as a list. So I'm going to use a div here with a class of grid, and grid calls to 1 with a gap of 4. And then in between, I am going to call this booking item like an HTML, and I want to render it 2 times. So of course I'm going to add v-4 with I, and in source to be 2. And outside that 4, also we need that key binding, where I'll simply pass that I. And with that, if we now have a look, we have this look going on. Now let's make it a bit better. We go to that booking item, and to this wrapper div, I'm going to pass a class of padding 4. Well, the thing would be that within this rounded card, we don't make this outside div, but inside, let's make a div with padding 4. So class padding 4, and then there we pass view course. So with that, we now have a nice looking card, and now we are reusing this rounded card for both of this course item and this booking item, as you can see. So with that default slot learned, we should know that slot just doesn't end here. This was a basic unnamed default slot. There is something else known as named slot. So slots that has name. And the thing is, you see in our tiny little website, we have already used this rounded card in 2 places. Now you might imagine in a larger application, you might want to use this rounded card look in multiple places. For example, where you have admin section, where you want to put settings and input section and product section and so on. You might want that. And to make our application more dynamic and flexible, we have the concept of named slot. So moving forward, for this course item and then this booking item, I'm not going to use this rounded card anymore, because I want to take this rounded card and move it one step, or abstract it just a step further. So we have something more flexible, because you see this 3 sections of a card is something we might have for some other place, maybe reviews and so on. Don't worry, I will do the coding and explain, so it becomes water easy for you. Let's create a new component, and I'm going to call it card sections.view. Now in this card sections.view, we need template, and within this template, after that I also want a script with the setup. Now my idea is here that I want to import that rounded card. So that rounded card from @/components/rounded card. And then this rounded card is what I will put here. Now it just doesn't end here. Within this rounded card, I will have 3 different slots. So a place that will take this head section, a place that will take this body section, and then a place that will take this foot section, so the footer section. So I'm going to say slot, and I'm going to give it a name by saying hash and then header. Sorry, it takes a name. By saying name and passing a name, which in this case I'll say header. Now just for the sake of demonstration, I'll keep a unnamed slot just like before, so we see how named slot and unnamed slot works. And then a third slot, which I'll give a name of footer. Now, basically, my idea is that I want to bring the items from this course section into this card section. So from that course items. So just for the time being, I'm going to grab all of this. So Control C, and I'm going to momentarily paste it here in our card section, because I want some default styling for 3 of these slots that we have. So for this first one, I want these stylings that this H3 has. So I'm just going to take this H3, come up here, and instead of this title, I'm going to use this slot between the contents of that H3. And then this shouldn't be H3 anymore, it can be a div, just to be more general. And I think we can make some good spacing here. Alright, now for this second one, I want this item, so I'll grab it. And of course this shouldn't be a P anymore, but better to make it a div, just to be more generic. And then between the contents, I'm going to grab this slot and paste right here. Now for this last one, let's grab this slot, and I want this slot to be a part of this div here, this div with this padding 4. So I'm just going to remove all of this and add that slot back in. So with that, we have a card section that has predefined slots, and that the slots has its own styling. Let's now use this slot in course item and then later in booking item, so we see how does it look like. So like I said, in course item, I don't want to use this rounded card anymore, but I want to use my card sections. So we don't need this import of rounded card anymore, but now it should be that card sections, like so. And to use it, I'm just going to change that rounded card to now say card section. And with that, let's now have a look what we have. So I'm going to save it, and you see we now have an extra top section and an extra bottom section. Now the reason for it is when we have this name slot and then default slot and the name slot, so there where we use it, because we are not mentioning that which items should go into that named slot, all the slot, so basically all the items automatically goes to that unnamed default slot. And that is why we have this middle section, and then this empty top and bottom section is being rendered from this named header and footer slots. So now let's make a proper arrangement, and let's make sure that things go to its original places. So in this card section, we have 3 slots, right? And to use those name slots, we use a template. And then in this template, we say hash followed by the name. As you can see, it already appears here. So in this header, I already have styles that matches that H3. So I'm just going to take this title and pass it here. And if I save it, you see that title is now showing in its proper place. We then have the other template, which would go for the default slot, and there I just want to pass this price. And if I save it, we have something. And now for the last template, which would be the footer slot, I'm going to say hash footer, and then therein I'm going to take this padding and then this div. So the button div and the padding, which says description. So the paragraph. I'm just going to grab it. We don't need this anymore. And I'm going to paste it right in between the footer template. So save it. And there we have it. Now the thing is, this template, this unnamed template, should bear the name of default. So hash default. And like that, we already have the look we wanted, or the look we had from before. One thing you should know that if you don't mention anything for the default template, so for example, let me grab this and let me remove this, and if I paste it just like that, this, by the way, would also act the same. It would automatically create a template default and pass the data right where it should go, so to that default slot. Alright, onwards to conditional slots rendering and conditional CSS applying. Because as you can see, our Your Courses section has those card sections, which is looking a bit odd. It has this empty head and empty footer. So we should make our card section such that it only shows that header section or this header part or the footer part if there is some data that should be displayed. So in this card section, where we have this header slot, and then in that parent div, we want to insert some logic. We are going to say v-if, and then in equals to double quotes, we're going to say $slot dot header. So if that is true, so if slot header is true, we want to render it. So with that, if I save it, you see the header section is already gone from here. Now, of course, likewise, I also want the same for this footer. So in this div of the footer slot, I'm going to add that v-if, and there say $slots.footer, and Control S to save it. With that, our header and footer is gone, and it now looks way better. But we still have a problem. The problem is this Your Courses section is still rendering that bottom border, which is not necessary if you think. And this is where we need to learn about conditional CSS. So for example, if I increase this border to now say border be 20, you see we have this gigantic border. And so we are going to bind this class and pass JavaScript expression. So here, because we want to bind certain things, we add that colon first, and then I'll grab all of this. And within single quotes, I'll pass those classes back, and I'm going to say true. The problem was this should be within an object. And then in single quotes, I pass the classes, which is true. So now you can imagine this padding 4 should always be there. But this border and this border color should only be there if there is a footer. So I'll grab it outside of this and then separate this expression by a comma, and then within single tags, single quotes, I'm going to post that back in. And then outside, I'm going to say $slots.footer. So if footer is present, this border and border color should be appearing. So with that, if we save it, you see we have this border for this all courses card, but no border here for all your courses. And let's change that back to just border bottom. So that was it for conditional slots rendering and conditional CSS rendering. So with a lot of flexibility and reusability in our app, one last reusability for the moment would be that in this all courses cards, we have this button, this purchase button. Now later we also want a button for this Your Courses items. So we have a button at the end here, which we can click to remove the things we buy or maybe report, whatever. So my idea is that I want to reuse this button for both the places. Just that then the buttons will have different text between it and different styling for both of them. And also when we click on the button, different actions should happen. So I'll go to that rounded card, not really, this course item, and I'm going to close everything else. There where we have this button, I want to grab it out. So I'm just going to copy it for the moment, and I'm going to create a new component, and I'm going to call it rounded button.view. And then in there, of course, we need the template first. And then a script with the setup tag. And now in this template, I'll simply add div, and between the div, I'll keep that button. Now for this button, what are the things we need? If you think about it first, instead of this hard-coded purchase, we should use a slot so we can pass various text to it. And also we need that emit to be declared here as well. So in this script, I'm going to say define emits, and in this method, we pass an array, and here I'm going to name it click. So our emits is now locked in. And with that, we can use this rounded button in this course item. So we should import it. Import rounded button from @/components/rounded button.view. And then this rounded button is what I want to use here. So just like that. Now this rounded button will have this purchase as its default slot. And of course, we also need to pass an @click. So we emit everything. So basically this thing here. And with that, I'm going to remove this rounded card, that extra button. So we are left here with our button. And if I right click and inspect and go to console, if I click it, we can see that our button is working. Now this same exact button should also be used within that booking item. So let's go there and let's import this rounded button here so that we can use it. So inside of this div, let's add outside. So we add another, let's just add our rounded button. So our rounded button with, let's say, report. So we have our report, but I want this button to be next to this div. So I'm just going to wrap it in a new div. And I'm going to say class flex and justify between. And I'm going to also say item align center, maybe item center. All right, so they're perfectly centered. And now we have this exact button being rendered in two different places. Now, just for demonstration, I would also like to show how we can handle that click here. For example, here at this @click, I want to do again console.log, and this time, let's say, report it. So with that, if I open the console tab and click this report button, you see it says reported, but if I click this purchase button, it says button clicked. Now in the next lesson, we are going to make variants of these two buttons, I mean this round button, so both the places shows two different looks. So with our rounded card being extracted and reused in multiple places, I also want to introduce the concept of component variants. So one component having multiple faces, you could say. For this rounded button, maybe the look that we have now, it should be the default look. And this default look might be used for anywhere where we don't explicitly say which look we want. For example, in this Your Courses section, we might want to say that this button should have a danger look, so a red style, so to say. Now, to work with that, first of all, we want to pass some data to this rounded button. And the way we pass data to a component would be that we say define props if we want to pass down the component. And in this method, I want this JavaScript object where I'm going to name a property, and that would be variant. And then this variant itself is an object. And because I want to add a default value to it, I also should mention add this type, which I'll set to string. And they also take a default value. So I'm going to say default default, and I'm going to set it as default, and you will see what this is. And before this, above this, I'm going to mention a const variance variable, and then this variance will be an object which has two key and two value pairs. So the first one would be default, and this will have some styling. So you can imagine from this button, we want this border, the border gray, and yeah, first the border and the border gray. Also maybe this hover border color, so background color is something we want. So I'm just going to grab it out of here and paste it here. And the other variant I want would be a danger variant. And for this danger variant, I think I want, first I want to change the background. So BG red to 200. And I want this border color to change as well. So the border color should be, I don't know, maybe no need for a border color. The text will have a color of red 900, and when the button is enabled and hovered upon, so sudo enabled, sudo hovered, I want the background color to change to red 100. So now we should plug these styles to these classes. And because we want to bind some classes, we add that colon first of all. And I'm going to grab everything out of it. And this time I'm going to use an angled bracket. And in single quotes, I'll pass those things back in. And I'm going to set this just normally, so no need to say true. Now the next style that should be added would be the variance. So this variance and there whichever variant that we get. So variance, and we want to index them by the variant. And let's try this already. We can add something to this course item, but if we don't add something, it will automatically resort back to default. But in this booking item, if we say variant and we say danger, we show this red thingy here. Now one more thing would be that in this rounded button, we should add a safety net, because now you see this variant is, if we pass nothing, we show default, but if we pass that danger value, we get the danger styling from here to there. But what if we make a mistake? What if we say danger us? You see, that's a problem. And so we should add a safety net, and that would be, here we say double question mark, and if something goes wrong, we just want to show variance dot default. And with this, in our booking item, even if we make a mistake, you see we show the default styling. Our static UI for this application is now ready. Well, it's now time that we move forward with making sure that we learn how to send data to a server, how to fetch data from there, and how to have various loading states. And for that, we are going to use a development API server. And to install it, we're going to do npm space I space dash dash save dash dev. And then space JSON dash server. This would be the name of that package. And we need a specific version. So at 0.17.4. And with that, if we hit enter, we will get this package into our workspace. And now we have to configure it. So we go to package JSON, and there where we have that scripts, we add a new script. And the name of this script is going to be server. And the command that this script is going to run is JSON dash server and then dash dash watch space db.json. So db.json is what we are going to create, and there we will store all the data. And then after a space dash dash delay, and we want a delay of 3 seconds, so equals to 3000. And then space, we need to specify a port for this dummy development server. So dash dash port space 3001. And with this, we should now create a new file to hold the data that we want to send and receive. So the mock server that we want to use. So db.json into our root. And there, first let's create this object literal. And then within we will have two key value pairs. The first one is courses, which is a list. And then I'll have another one, which would be bookings, so things we bought. And then that would be another list. Now for this first one, let's add 3 courses. So using this object literal, let's add an ID. So all courses are unique. And I'll set it, this should be actually within double quotes. So ID, that would be 1. Then let's say the title. That is, for example, 9.99. Let's set, what do we have? We have ID title, the description. So description, and that would be 0 to hero view course. And lastly, one more property, that would be bot. So is it bot? And I'm just going to say false for all the items that we are going to create. So that was 1, and then one more time, that would be 2, and oh, there we have title, and we should have a price. So this should be price, and we also need a title. So title, and that would be, for example, for the second one, we say go course. And for this first one, we will need one as well. And there we say view course. And let's add one more. So this is going to be 3. And let's make it dart course. Just like that. And we can already run this server in a different terminal. Let's say npm run server. And you see we get our 2 endpoints, one for the courses and the other for the bookings. And with that, let's also run our web server. That would be npm space run space dev. So 2 running in 2 separate terminals. With our JSON server now up and running, we should fetch those dynamic courses, because those courses are what I want to display here in all courses. I don't want to simply display this dummy fixed data, but we should get data from API and show the data that we are fetching. And the idea is that we want to fetch all those data in this app.view, and because in this app.view we have that course item component, so here in this app.view we are going to fetch all those data and pass those data dynamically in this course item. And because we will get those data, so all those course data, and we are going to save it in an array, so then we are also going to modify this v4, so that for in loop, so that v4 directive, and we are going to pass not this dummy int2 anymore, but we are going to pass dynamic array, so we can iterate over the array. And because we want to fetch certain things and store it in a variable, and for this variable to reflect on the UI, we need to wrap that variable in a ref. I'm sure you already know that. So let's import ref from view. And now let's create a new const variable. So const courses is equals to a ref, and we initialize it. So initialize this method with an empty array. And then let's create the function. So const fetch courses is equals to an async and then an arrow function. And the process of getting the data would be, we are going to expect a response from the API. So we say const response. So we create a variable to store the response and is equals to await, and then we call the native fetch API that we have for all browsers. And there I want to pass the endpoint of this courses. So in single quotes, I pass it here. And so after we get this response, I want to save it in this courses variable. So I call that courses and there the value. And to that I pass await and then say response, and I want to get it out of the JSON. So JSON, I call the JSON method on it. So with this fetch courses should run when we turn this application on. And for that we want the on mounted hook. So this on mounted hook can then be called, and then on mounted is only going to run when this app starts for the first time. And there within this expression, I'm going to call that fetch courses. So with this, we can then use this courses variable up there where we have that course item component. So instead of iterating over this number, I want to iterate over the course, and I'll get a single course. And this course also has an ID which is unique. So that is what I'll pass for this key. So course.id. And because I want to pass dynamic data to all of this, I should bind those dynamic data to these properties. And so we're going to now add the colon in front, and there we are going to now use double mustache and say course.title. And we are going to do the same for the price. So let's say course dot price, and then for description, let's do course dot description. But I think we don't need the double mustache. Yeah, we don't need the double mustache because we are not showing anything here. We're just passing data. So with that, let's save. And with that, I think, oh yes, we are now rendering dynamic components. Our data is coming from API, nothing is hard-coded, and we show view course, go course, and dart course. Perfect. Let's have a look at the way we are loading the things in. So whenever we start this, we see we have this empty place. Let's start with the loading process. So we make the loading process much smoother. The idea is that we want a loading flag. So I'm just going to make a const loading variable and set it to ref, and it should be initialized with false. And the idea is if this loading is true, I don't want to show any of this, but instead I want to show here a loading indicator or something. And this should be false. So whenever we then run this fetch course function, first we reset this. We set loading and its value to true, and at the end of this function we should set it back to its original state, which is false. So loading.value is equals to false. And actually many things can go wrong here, and we will stay stuck in the loading state to true forever if anything goes wrong. So we should get it out and wrap it in a try finally block. So try, so the code that might go wrong, and then in a finally block we set that loading value to false. So no matter what, we set it to false after some time. And so with this loading variable in place, I'll go up here. So we have a div section which is responsible for the grid, and outside that I'm going to make another div, and there I'm going to say v-if. So if we are loading, I only want to show this div then, and here I'm just going to say courses are loading. And if that is not the case, here I'm going to use v-else. So we only show one of the two. So now let's restart. We see we have this courses are loading, and then after some time we slot in the actual course item components. And so with the loading state now being shown, you see in real world websites, we don't say that course is loading. That's yuck. Actually, we show an element like this that then changes, right? We have a pulsating animation and then a pulsating card that changes to the real card. And so we're going to make a skeleton that looks like this. In the component, let's create a skeleton course item dot view, and there first of course we need the template. And actually I think we are going to need the rounded card here. So let's bring the script with the setup and let's import rounded card. So import rounded card, and this should be at slash components slash rounded card. So this rounded card is what we want to use inside. And then the idea is that first let's use it in this app.view, so we get at least we get to see how does it look like. So in app.view, let's import it. I'm going to say import skeleton course item from at slash components slash skeleton course item. And then the skeleton course item, let's just output it first like that. So we at least have some sort of look. Now for this rounded item, rounded card within that skeleton course item, let's start the design process. Let's add a div first of all. And this div will get a class of flex and flex dash call, because inside we will have two divisions now. So the first division will get a class and it will have a height of, let's say, 36 and a BG of gray 300. And of course we want to send it. This is already rounded, no problem. Let's add a border with a border of gray 200. All right. And after that, we need one more division. So maybe this can be 18. And we don't need this BG white here anymore. We just want two items inside. So here, instead of this, I'm going to add two more divs. So this first div will have a class of BG-gray 300 and rounded pool with a height of, let's say, 8 and a width of 24. Let's make it 36. And I think we should give it some sort of a padding. And actually here I'm going to say justify between. What's wrong? We have this too. And let's put here items center, or maybe align center. Align, I don't know what's wrong. Let's add flex here with items center. All right. And so after that, I think we also want some sort of padding. So here, let's also add a padding of 4. And then at the end, I still want to justify end here. Justify end, because then I'm going to add another div to show something like a button. Maybe justify between. All right, and this can be of height 6 with a width of maybe 18. All right, that looks good. Now all that's left is that we show this instead of that course is loading. So in that app.view, we already have this, and we want to show that here instead of course is loading. And actually, we're also going to call the v-4 here, so we show it, I don't know, 4 times. So I in 4, and we need to give it that colon key, and there I'll pass that I. Now again, I'm going to use this grid style from here, so I'm just going to grab this and paste it up here. And with that, if we refresh, we have that super amazing look that changes to the real card. We are now able to fetch the courses from the internet. And so it only makes sense that now we should be able to click this purchase button and really book something for real. So in this Your Course section, we show real value. And to do so, first I'll create the function that will be responsible for getting this course and then posting it to the server. And for that, after this const fetch course, I'm going to create a new function. So const, what should it be? Maybe register course. And then here, this will be an async function as well. And inside, first of all, I want to actually get a booking, get a course, and then I want to edit it just a bit. So of course I need to get the course in this function from outside, and for that let's expect it here. So I say a course. So now with that, let's create a new variable and say new course, for example, and to this I want to set some properties. The properties could match the db.json, and we can get one of this from here, and let's just paste it here, just like that. And then this ID, we want to generate it randomly. So I'm going to say date.now, and then to that now I'm going to say toString, because that now gives us a number. For the title, we want the course that we are getting, and there the title. For the price, the course.price. And for the description, we have course.description. Now here at this point, I still want to keep the status as pending. Later, we will change it to confirm. So after this new variable, let's work with the function that it would be actually responsible for sending the data. So we say await, and then again fetch. And to this fetch, let's pass the endpoint, which would be this bookings endpoint. Now here we should also pass some other configurations. So separated by a comma, I'm going to add this object notation, and in that we need to specify some options. So the method for posting something to the server is post. Then we have what's known as headers, and in headers we specify some types. So the first one is going to be content dash type, just like that. So C capital and T capital, and the value for it is going to be application slash JSON, because JSON is the format that we are going to use for transmitting our data. And after that we want the body, and body is what is going to contain our real new course data. So there I just want to call JSON, and to that I want to call stringify, because I want to stringify the JSON. And in the stringify method, I want to pass the entire new course, so all the fields of it, so new course with that spread operator. And then separated by a comma, I want a status that should be edited or added. And there I'll set it as confirmed. Now with that, all that's left is that we be able to click this button and send it out to the server. So let's go up there, and for this course item we have this @click, and we are just simply console logging that button clicked. We don't want that anymore. We want to call our register course, and to that I want to pass the course that we are iterating over. And so let's give it a try. Let's click a purchase button, and let's wait for something to show up, and indeed it says post/booking 201. And with that, if we visit db.json, we see in this bookings array we have our entry. In our app, we are now able to post a course purchase order, and of course, we fetch things with nice loading state. So regarding fetching things from the internet, what's missing is that we should fetch the courses that we have bought, so our bookings, and show that bookings with some nice loading state. Let's do that in one go. Now, my idea is that I want to create a skeleton for booking items. So I'm just going to grab all of this from here, and I'm going to create a new component, and I'm going to call it skeleton bookings item, a booking item, skeleton booking item dot view. Oh, what's wrong? And in this booking item, I'm just going to paste all of that from skeleton course item. And here, actually, if I load things, I just want this bottom part. So I'm going to keep this div, and I'm going to remove this div and also this outer div. And with that already, I want to see how does it look like. So there in that app.view, for the second h2, I'm still going to use that single loading. And here I'm going to create a new div, and I'm going to say v-if loading. So the content of this div should only be shown if we are loading. And I'm going to also add the v-else here. Now we should also import the booking skeleton. So that would be skeleton booking item. And let's use it inside of that v-if div. So we initialize it this way, and that is the look we have. Perfect. Now let's work on the function that allows us to fetch the items. Let's create a new function, call it const fetch booking is equals to async, and then this function where first let's create a const response is equals to await, and then we want to fetch, and the endpoint we need would be this bookings endpoint. And we want to, oh, sorry, just like that. And then we want to store it in a variable where we will keep all the bookings. So let's create that variable. So I'm just going to say const bookings is equals to a ref that holds an array. And this bookings, and there the value will be now equals to await that response, and to that we execute the JSON method. And of course, since we are using this loading for this fetch bookings, I first want to call that loadings.value and set it to true, and wrap this failable code in a try finally block. So in the try, I'll set this much, and later in the finally, we are going to set that loading.value back to false. And then this fetch bookings is what I want to execute at the start of this program. So right there. And with that, we can now use these bookings to iterate over these items here, because now we are doing it that hard-coded way. So I let's not do that. So let's pass that bookings, and so we want to iterate and get a single booking, and then this booking is what I want to use for the key, and there the ID property. So with that, if I now save, we have one course item here. That's because in db.json we have one booking. Now you see in db.json the title is go course, but it shows here view course. That's because we have it hard-coded there in bookings booking item. So to pass some data from this parent to the child, we should define a prop. Let's do that. So define props, which is a method, and to this I'm going to pass an object, and I'm expecting, let's say, just a title. So a title of type string, and then this title is what I want to use here. So in double mustache, I declared the title. So now we have this empty because we now need to pass that data from that app to that booking item. So back in that app, we call the title, but not like that. We do it the bind way. So there, colon title equals to, and then in double quotes, we say that single booking, and there the title. With that, if we save, we have that go course, just the way we have it here. And even if we refresh, we show this nice loading indicator before we slide in the real value. Now in this short video, I want to show you a very nice animation that we can use for all our loading states. So back at that skeleton booking item and skeleton course item, I'm going to add a tailwind class. So for the topmost div, I'm just going to say animate dash pulse. So I'm just going to use this too for the skeleton booking items, and there the topmost div will get that class. With that, if we now restart our app, you see we have that subtle animation going on. So starting with this video onwards, we are going to work on optimistic UI and a bit of quality of life improvements. Now, what is optimistic UI? The idea is that whenever we purchase something, so we are waiting 3 seconds for it to be sent to the server and then we get something back. But in optimistic UI, the moment we click purchase, we want to already insert it to the bookings array and then initiate the API sending process. So the data goes to the server, and if everything is all right, we just update the status that we have. So for example, we insert the item into the bookings with this status pending, but nonetheless we insert it. So immediately we get a list like this. But then when the API processing is done and then we get something back, we get this status as confirmed, and that's what we then reflect here. First, we are going to stop ourselves from purchasing one course multiple times. And actually, we have a problem. You see, in our register course, we bought this new course, right? And on this new course, we are setting the ID. That is something we shouldn't do because we are changing the ID and then sending it to the server. So it should be actually course.id. And with that, in this register course, I'll set a function. So if, and I'm going to check all the bookings, so bookings.value, and there I'm going to use this sum method. And sum is going to iterate over all the items that we have. So for example, each of the item is a single booking, and this single booking then, so the booking has an ID. If that is equals to course.id, in that case I don't want to go further. I just want to call alert, and I want to alert the site that course already purchased, and then I want to return. So with this, let's do a purchase, and again, but what's wrong? And actually, I just had to refresh, and with that, if I click this purchase, you see I see this course already purchased, and I don't purchase it any further. And we should also verify this optimistic behavior that we have. And for that, I'm going to remove those two bookings, or maybe the last one. Let's just remove this last one. Let's restart our app. And I'm going to cause a deliberate error. I'm going to cause an error in this endpoint. I'm just making it up. So now if I click this purchase, we start with pending. And because we have some sort of error, after 3 seconds, you will see that this thing should get removed. Well, if I click this purchase. We start off at pending, and then after 3 seconds, we should get it removed. Oh, you see, that's why we should test. In this if, we are checking for response okay, but we should also have an else. An else where we can also execute something. And here in this else, I also want to grab this bookings value. And I want to remove it if something goes wrong. Also, I would like to return from here. So with that, let's restart. And now let's try again. So I click this purchase. It comes here with pending, and after 3 seconds it goes away automatically because I have an error in this link. And we should also verify this optimistic behavior that we have. And for that, I'm going to remove those 2 bookings, or maybe the last one. Let's just remove this last one. Let's restart our app. And I'm going to cause a deliberate error. I'm going to cause an error in this endpoint. I'm just making it up. So now if I click this purchase, we start with pending, and because we have some sort of error, after 3 seconds, you will see that this thing should get removed. Well, if I click this purchase, we start off at pending, and then after 3 seconds, we should get it removed. Oh, you see, that's why we should test. In this if, we are checking for response okay, but we should also have an else. An else where we can also execute something. And here in this else, I also want to grab this bookings value. And I want to remove it if something goes wrong. Also, I would like to return from here. So with that, let's restart. And now let's try again. So I click this purchase. It comes here with pending, and after 3 seconds it goes away automatically because I have an error in this link. Next, let's work on the ability to optimistically remove or report this course from our list and from the db.json. So the idea is whenever we click something, it should be removed from our list automatically, immediately. And then if something goes wrong, we put it back, or if everything is well, we leave it the way it is. So first, let's create the function that will handle it. So const, maybe we can say report course, which is equals to an async function because it will fetch the API. And this function, we are going to expect an ID. So the course ID is what we are going to expect. And then I'm also going to find the index of this course within our bookings because I want to remove it immediately first before calling the API. So we can use that method that we worked with before, this const index, where we use this find index method on bookings.value to find the index. So I'm just going to grab it. And that's how we get the index, and actually we should use this course ID right here. With that we get this index, and then I also want to grab that original value, because the thing is, if we have to put it back, I'll need the item that I will put back, right? So I'm going to do const to be deleted course. That's how I'm going to name it, to be deleted course. And here I'm going to say bookings.value, and I'm going to pass this index. So this already gives me that item that I want to delete, but nonetheless, after that, I'm going to say bookings dot value, and there the splice method, and to this splice method I'm going to pass this index, and I'm going to pass 1. So what this does is this splice helps us removing something in this array at this index by 1 item. All right. Now let's try the try and catch game. So in the try, we say const response is equals to await, and we call this that fetch function to which we want to pass a link, so an endpoint. And the endpoint would be the bookings endpoint, right? So the bookings, and actually the bookings, and then because I want to remove something, I'm going to pass the ID of the item that should be removed. So dollar, and then in square brackets, I'm going to pass that course ID, just like that. And actually for this interpolation to work, we don't use that single quotes, but we use backticks. And so we can pass that. And then we have to pass certain options, so using this, where we are going to say that the method is going to be delete. And so with that, we are going to initiate it, and then we are going to see if response was okay. So we're going to do if not response dot okay. Then I just want to throw an error so that we end up in the catch block. So we say throw error, and there we're going to say couldn't delete. Couldn't delete. And so after that, we end up in the catch block if there is an error, and there we are going to do bookings dot value, and there we're going to again call that splice, because splice also helps us put something back if it doesn't exist. And there at that index, I want to put that original to be deleted course, so just at that index. And for this error, by the way, I'm going to say console.error, and I'm going to pass that error. So there is our report course. Just to review again, first we are getting the index of the course within our bookings because we want to remove it. So we need to get the index so we can get the actual item that should be deleted. That's because this item is important, because we are removing our course immediately before we call the API. And so if something goes wrong, we put that course back where we took it from. And if everything is all right, we have already removed it. So now let's handle it. Now this rip function will be called from this booking item, and so we need to make sure that this booking item component can actually emit an event. And where we have this at click, this should actually emit some event. And so in this booking item, we are going to declare such an event by calling that define emits. And there I'll have an emit of maybe report. And then this report event must be emitted. So here at that at click, we are no longer going to do console.log, but then we're going to do $emit, and in this parenthesis we pass the name, which is report. And because we have this report event being emitted in that app.view at that booking item, we will see that at report is available. And then to this at report, I want to pass that report course function, which will also take the ID. So we say this booking.id. So we can just grab it from here and put it here. And with this, let's report something. So it gets removed and it's gone forever. If I come down, yes, the delete was successful. But what if we want to see if that optimistic booking also handles the error well? So here I'm going to cause an error by causing an error in the link. And then if we purchase a course and if I report it, it should be, yes, see, it didn't got deleted. It got removed from the array, yes, and then it was put back because there is an error. So our optimistic update is working. And with that, I'm going to revert the error back. So our app is in pristine working shape. And yes, our next idea is that we want to introduce the ability to refetch and show error states. Now, what do I mean? For example, if some error occurs when fetching courses or some error occurs when fetching my purchased courses, I want to show a button and some error message so the user can click to reinitiate that fetching process. And at this moment, we have a problem, which is that our app.view has grown exponentially, right? It's a pretty large component and it's responsible for so many different things for handling, fetching courses and bookings and reports and so on. We don't want this. In a production app, you don't want this because Vue doesn't put the restriction of how many components you can have. I think it's better to use it. We should modularize our app such that components are isolated and responsible for one single thing then rather than doing everything here. So bookings and courses and everything from everywhere, right? So moving on, we are going to start with this modularity. Let's get started with the process of extraction. So I'm just going to create a new component and I'll name it course section. So course section dot view and click enter. Now here I need the template, of course, and I will also need the script setup. And from .app.view, I want to bring basically this entire div, so everything for this all courses, so this entire part here. So I'm just going to grab from here up until here, and I'm going to cut it out and paste it in this template of course section. Now we will need its appropriate items from that script. So there we have this course, we need this, so I'll cut it out. But additionally, we will also need those course item and this skeleton course item. So let's grab this and put it right here. We will also need that ref and on mounted. So I'll copy it and add it here. Now here we want to get this fetch course. So let's grab this, cut it out, bring it to this course section and paste it. We will also need that on mounted. So I'm just going to copy it and remove this fetch course from here. So I can paste it back in that course section. And there we only want this course fetch course. And what's more, I think we can import this course section here now in this app.view. So we can do import and we want to do course section from add component. So let's use this course section where it's supposed to go right after that first H2. And with that, in our course section, register course is assigned the value but never used. Where is that register course? So we want to get this register course, but we will keep this here for now. So with that, we are fetch bookings, we have all of this. We should have a working demo at the moment, but the reason that things are not working is because this register course is not hooked up. And you might be thinking, how do we plug it in? Because this register course is being propagated from this course section. So the best thing would be that we emit an event from here and we propagate it upwards to that app.view. So let's define an emit. I'm going to say here, define emits, and I'm going to name it as register. So then this register, I'll use it here, and also I'm going to pass this course to it. So I'm just going to say $emit And to this, I'm going to pass that register, and outside that, comma, I'm going to pass the course that I am supposed to pass out there. And in app.view, now I'm going to handle that event by saying at register, not here, here, at register. And to this, we are going to pass that register course. Now, register course requires this course. Now, how do we pass that course that we emitted with the event? We simply do dollar event, and with that, oh, we also need that loading. So let's grab this loading, let's copy it and paste it right here. So with that, we are again back to the point where we were, where we can purchase something, and of course we can't purchase something 2 times. Now in this course, we are already at a point that if we move this booking related items to a new component, for example, booking section, just like we did for this course section, we will have a problem because this course section has this register course function, and then this register course function internally does whatever it needs to do, and then it saves certain things to that bookings value. And bookings value would then go to that booking section, not the course section. And so we will have a sibling kind of relationship, right? That course section would be the sibling of that booking section that we want to create. And because between siblings, it's not easy that we emit something and we handle it in the sibling. That doesn't happen. It happens in parent-child. And so to move forward, now we are going to learn about composables in Vue. And composables are state that other components can access. And so let's get started with composables. Now to create a composable, we will create a folder in this src, and of course that's going to be composables. Just like that. And to create a file within composable, the convention is that you start with this use in smaller and then the name. So we're going to say use bookings.js. Now within this use bookings, first things that I want to import ref from Vue, because composables generally deals with reactive data. And now in these composables, I want to bring this loading and booking. So I'm just going to grab it out and paste it here. And to use these composables outside, we create this export default, and it's going to be a function, and I'm going to name it use bookings. Now this function must also return the things that we want to use outside. So that would be this loading and also this bookings. Now additionally, I'll also grab this fetch bookings out from here, and I'll paste it in this composable. And of course we need to mention it in this return so we can use it outside. With that, our composable is now ready. Let's now look at how we can use it. We go to that app.view, and now here first we have to import that composable. So we are going to do import use bookings from @/composables, then use bookings. And now to use things from this use bookings, we say use bookings, we execute it, but to get the individual items, we need to put those in variables. So we say const, and then we want the loading, we want the bookings, we also want the fetch bookings from this use booking. And with that, we have no use of this ref here, and our app is now working with those composables. So let's give it a shot. If we click purchase, we can't purchase because it's already here, but if we click the other purchase, we enter this optimistic view and then it gets confirmed. So our composable is now working. And now we are approaching a state that soon we will be able to get booking related items out of this app.view into the booking section.view, and still our courses section will be able to register and so on. Let's move further and let's grab this register course and report course out. So I'm just going to cut it out and I'm going to put it in this composables right after that fetch bookings. And for this to work outside, I will also make sure that they are present in the return clause. And now I think we can go to this app.view and actually we should pass that report course here. So this report course still works, but for that register course, which we handle from this course section, we should import that composable and use it. So I'm just going to grab this use bookings import and the way we get things from that use booking. So I'm just going to copy it out. So Control C to copy it. And in that course section, now I'm going to bring that in. We don't need all this. We just want this fetch bookings. We just want register course. So we will get rid of all of this and we are going to get that register course. And this register course will be used instead of this emit, just like that. And we can pass the course here. And because we are not emitting anything anymore, I am going to remove this define emits from here. And also in app.view, we are going to remove this at register. And now let's try again. And if I click purchase, it still works. Now in the next video, we are going to grab this booking item out of here to its own component. Let's now build our booking section. So in the components, I'm going to create that booking section.view, and it will have the template and of course the script with the setup. Now in the template, I'll go to that app.view and grab this entire part that is concerned with this booking. So I'm just going to cut it out and I'm going to paste it in the template. And for the script, we will not be needing this too anymore, but we will need the booking course. So let's import that. So we're going to say booking section, and also I'm going to use it right away. Now from inside, I think we also don't need this on mounted here anymore, and we also have no use for this composable here. So let's grab it all, cut it out, and let's paste those back in this booking section. So you see, at this point, we are already in a amazing situation where if we visit this app.view, our app.view is absolutely clear. And let's also see if everything is working. So if I click this purchase, it says already purchase, but nothing is showing up. Well, nothing is showing up because here we have no need for this. We are using that. We are using this loading, we are using the booking and this fetch and everything. We are basically using all the things. So ideally we should have the working demo. Now the reason that our booking section is not working because we have not imported this skeleton item and also this booking item. So let's work with that. Let's say import and we bring this skeleton booking item and this booking item. And it should be @/components/ booking item, and we should also import that skeleton booking item, just like that. So with that, if we restart our app, we are now back at the original state where we can purchase something, and of course we can remove something. Now, to bring an end to this entire application, this courses app, I would like to teach you how to render components dynamically. My idea is that we show this confirm and the pending, and instead of that, I want to show an icon. So to do that, I'm going to use this Lucid package. If you come to this lucid.dev, and if you click this hamburger, there we visit this packages, and we are going to use this Lucid view next. So let's click this guide, and we have this installation section where we are going to choose this npm. And this is the command then I'll grab and paste into my npm run dev terminal. So let's close it first and let's paste that command. And let's click enter. With that, we already are going to have that thing into our project. Let's now search for the icons that we want. So let's search for icons, and let's search for a loader. So this is the loader circle I want. All right, and the way we get it is just this way. No problem. And the place where we want to load it would be in source, components, and there's this booking item. Is it booking item? Yes, booking item. So let's import them first. We say import, and I want two items from here. First, the loader circle, and second, the check from Lucid icon view. And to use this, I am going to need two computed properties because we need to calculate which icon to show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two computed properties, and for to use computed properties we need to import computed from view. So we say import, and we're going to get computed from view. Now let's use it. First, I'm going to make a const variable, and I'm going to name it pending to understand that what's the status. So pending is equals to that computed, and in this computed method, we are going to run a function. And we're going to do is we're going to check this status, and to access this props within this setup script, we should assign this entire define props to a variable. So let's do that. Const props is equals to define props. So now we can access this props and there the status, and then we can check if this is triple equals to pending. So if it is pending, this returns true, and hence we get this pending. Now I want to get the icon, so I'm going to say const icon is equals to another computed, and here we are going to run a function again, and we are going to do is we're going to say if pending dot value, because computed is a ref by itself, we need to access the value. So if pending dot value, then we get loader circle, else we get the check, just like that. And now we can use this icon. So there in this div where we say that status, we don't want this status anymore, but now we are going to dynamically show a component. And the way we do that would be we use this component element, so that component element, and this component element has that :is property, is, and in this is I want to pass that icon. So with that, if I save and let's restart this application. Now actually we should do npm run dev. Now currently we are showing that icon. Now if I add one more, first we show that check and then we revert back to that tick. And to top this all off, I also want to add some classes to it. So I want this binded class because I will have some styling. So class, but it should be binded. And within this class, I'll add this object body and I'm going to say animate dash spin. And this should only happen when we are in the pending state. So then we are calling this pending as well. Now with that, let's remove both of this. Let's give it a restart. And now if we click this purchase, you see we have a nice loading circle and then we go to that tick. And then this is the way we show dynamic components. Therein that is, we pass the component that should be dynamically generated, and of course you know about that class binding. And the best way to figure out what to show in that dynamic component is to use computed, because computed runs automatically whenever things that it depends on changes. In the last course section, we used composable to store bookings and helper functions and some reactive variables. That worked because only few components need the data because they were close together. Now composables are just helper functions that help us reuse code. But here's the key thing. Every time a component uses a composable, it gets its own copy of the data. So if two components use the same composable, they don't automatically share updates. That's fine in small applications, but it breaks down in bigger ones. So imagine a shopping cart. If you add an item from the product page, you want the cart icon to update instantly, right? For that to work, those components need the same shared data. And that's where Pinia comes in. Pinia gives us one central store that every component reads from and updates. So a simple idea would be that composables help reuse logic. Pinia helps us share data across the app. And also here is another metaphor. Composable is, for example, everyone has their own notebook, so no one knows what each of them are writing in their own notebook. On the other hand, Pinia is a whiteboard where everyone is writing, so everyone can see what everyone else has written. Let's build our new application to learn about Pinia, the state management solution of Vue. So in the terminal, I'm going to do npm space create space Vue at latest and click enter. And then we need to name our project, and I'm going to name it Pinia-counter. And then we need to configure all these options, but because we are learning about Pinia, I'll not straight away choose this Pinia to be automatically installed in this project. We will learn how to install it manually, but moving on in large applications, you should just choose this option. So it already is downloaded and everything is already plugged in together. But nonetheless, I'm just going to click this ESLint and prettier, so we get some error suggestion. And now click enter, enter again, and skip all example code and start with a blank Vue project. I am going to select yes, so click enter. So I did already run this application, and here I have this blank app.vue. So nothing in the template and empty script and style scoped blocks. Now my idea is I'm going to create two components, so two counter components. In a new folder, let's name it components. And there, first I'm going to create the count_a.vue, something like this. So we have this template where we have a h2 and we say counter a. Then we show the count output because we are having this reactive variable in the setup script, and also we are manipulating the count button here already. And actually I'm also going to create one more, so we have a count minus minus. And similar to this, we're going to create another component, so that would be count b dot view. And let's paste it here. And we can simply say count B. Now to show both of this count A and count B, let's go to that app view and let's import both of them. So let's say import count A from at slash components slash count A. And for the next one, let's just paste it and say count B with count B being imported from the proper path. And with that, let's output them. So we say count A, and after that, we can say count B. So if we save it now, we show both of the counters. And actually, just to distinct them properly, I'm going to add an HR here, so a horizontal rule. Perfect. And if we click, it works. And at this point, our idea is not implemented well. Because if I click this increment, just this counter changes, and if I click this increment or decrement, this counter changes. Let's fix the spelling, by the way. This should be decrement, and here too. So, like I was saying, my idea is no matter which increment I click, both of this should increment, or no matter which decrement I click, both of these two counters should decrement. So we can already imagine at this point we should move to composable, because we have learned up until now that composable is a place where we can keep shared logic. So in the next video, let's use a composable, let's build a composable so we can achieve that. Let's work towards our goal, which is to increment. Whenever we click on any of these increment buttons or any of these decrement buttons, both of these counters should either increment or decrement together. So to achieve that, let's create our composable, and we're going to create this composables folder, and there we're going to create a composable known as use counter.js. Now, like we said earlier, composables are just a function that lets us reuse components. So I hope you remember in the courses application, we reuse certain things from that composable where we had that register course, and that register course was working with two different components. So the courses section.view and the booking section.view. And so to relate to that idea, we are going to bring on those reactive variable and the ability to increment and decrement into this use counter.js, and so that we can then use those things in count A and count B, and hopefully we should get our results. So in this use counter.js, let's build our composable. Now in this use counter.js, first things first, we need to import ref from view, and that is because we need to keep track of the count variable here. And then let's create an exportable function, because composables are just functions that return certain values. So we say export function, and I'm going to name this function use counter. And because there's a function, we make this parenthesis and then the function body. Now inside of this, first let's create our count variable. So const count is equals to a ref, and we initialize it at 0. And because we also want to manipulate this counter, so this count variable, I'm going to create two functions. So function increment, let's just stick with increment. So we say counter, so the count and the value there, we want to take it up a notch. So we want to plus it. And because we want to use this ref and increment outside, let's say return. And in this return clause, we want to pass that count and also the increment function. So we can use both of this variable and the function in the components where we initialize this use counter composable. With our use counter composable now ready, let's go to count a.view, so this component, and actually we do not need that decrement button anymore. And also because we have now extracted the count variable and the increment function, we have no use of this ref and this count variable here. So let's remove those. And let's import that use counter from there. And to use that use counter, we execute it. And from this, we save things in a variable. So I'm going to say const. And from there, I want the count. Also, I want the increment. And now to use it, our count is already plugged in. It's just that we have to take this increment and pass it here at the click of this button. So with that, our counter A is ready. Let's work on that counter B. Now the fact is that counter B and counter A looks exactly the same. So I'm just going to copy everything from count A and change it in count B. Except that we have to change this heading to say count B. Let's now see if clicking this button increases both of these numbers, because logically it should, as both of these components are relying on the state that we have here in this use counter, so this count variable. Let's click. And we see that this increment just increments this counter, not the next counter. And likewise here, if we click here, just this one increases. So this again reflects the metaphor that I gave in the introduction of this lecture, that using composable is like having a lot of people with their own notebooks. So what they write in their own notebook, others don't know. While using Pinia, so the state management that we are going to learn next, is like a whiteboard, so anyone writing there is visible for everyone else to see. Now to use Pinia, we need to turn this running application off. So Control C and Control L. That's because Pinia is a third-party library which we need to install. So in the terminal, we're going to do npm I Pinia. And with that, let's click enter. So npm installs it from the internet, and with that, it's done. Now to use Pinia, we should go to that main.js. Because in this main.js, we use that create app from view, and Pinia is also a top level package which we should initialize here. So right after getting that create app from Pinia and import app, I'm also going to do import, and I'm going to say in this curly braces, create Pinia from Pinia. And so with this, after we do our app creation, and because we are bringing this Pinia here, what we should do is we should destructure this just a tiny bit. So for example, we do const app is equals to, then we say this create app, and then we pass that app there. That's because we need this app property to use the Pinia. So then we say app.use, and then we pass that create Pinia inside. And now with that, we can simply call this app, and there directly pass that mount so that it mounts to that ID of app. With that, our Pinia is installed and Pinia is plugged into our project. Now when you do npm create view at latest, if you choose Pinia there, all this much would be done for you automatically. And with that, let's now use Pinia. So there where we have this use counter, instead of this composable, now we're going to create a new store folder in this src. So we're going to say stores. And the file we will create would be counter store.js. And that's the naming convention, that you end it with that capital store. Now inside of this counter store.js, first we need to import Pinia and that ref from view, because again this store is pretty much similar to this, as you will see. So we will need to keep track of our reactive variable. So we're going to do import, and we're going to call define Pinia. It's like define props and define emits. We need to define Pinia. So we say this define store, and after that we say import, and I want to import ref from view. And with these two things imported, we should now define the store that we bought here. So we say define store, which is a method. And if we want to use this method outside, we need to make this into an exportable variable. So we say export const, and I'm going to name it use counter store. And then this would be the naming convention. So we start off at the use and then we end with the store. And in between, we name it appropriately. So in this case, this is use counter store. Now this defined store takes two things. It takes a name and it takes a function. And for the name, I'm going to pass counter, or maybe, all right, counter is good. And for the function, now in between, it's pretty much the same like this much. We declare our const count, which I'm going to use using this ref and set it to 0. And then I'll have my function increment, where I want to use this count and the value there, and I will increment it. And because I want to use both of this outside, I'll have this return clause. And there I'm going to pass the count, also the increment. So this much is pretty much the same as this composable. So with that, it's time that we move to our counter A component and counter B component. And therein, we don't use this two anymore, but we're going to use our own counter store. So let's import them. I'm going to do import, and let's say use counter store, just like that. And now to use this, we execute this use counter store, and unlike that composable, we don't get each item from within, but we store the whole thing in a variable. So we say const and counter is equals to this counter store. And with that, we have no use of this anymore. Now to use this counter up here, we are simply going to say counter and dot the count inside of that. Likewise, for this increment, we're going to say counter dot increment, because that counter has the increment function inside of it. So with that, pretty much the same goes for this count B, except that we change the name to count B. And let's run our project. So we come to the terminal and we do npm space run space dev and hit enter. So our app is now running. And I think we should go to that main.js, and yes, actually this app.useCreatePinia should be executed. So we add this function execution. With that, let's restart, and our app is here. And now if we click this increment, both of these counts increment together. If I click this increment, both of them go up. And likewise would be the same if I would have that decrement. For example, in this count store, I can also add a function of, let's say, function decrement, and to use it outside, I need to pass it to this return clause. Now let's go to that count A and create a new button and say counter.decrement and decrement here. And let's also get this button in count B. And with that, if I click this decrement, actually let's restart. So if I click increment, they go up. If I click decrement, they go down. They should go down. All right. So increment works for both of them. Decrement works for both of them. And in this entire application, first we built a dummy, so a local counter app. Then we moved it to composable, and then we moved it to Pinia. So now we understand the whole flow and why we need certain items at certain times. In this course section, we are going to learn about the view router and all about it. And view router is what helps us navigate between various pages within our view application. For example, if I click this about, I go to this about page and you see the URL change being reflected. I can even go back, or I can just click this home, for example, like this. And in this home screen, I have two products, of which if I click go to details, I go to a detail page where I show the ID of the product that I came in. Now, additionally, we are also going to learn about route guards, so authenticated routes. And for example, if I want to go to that admin screen, because I'm not logged in, I get auto redirected to this login screen. And here, if I write something wrong, I get that access is denied. But if I write the right thing, I get auto redirected to this admin dashboard. And in this course section, we're going to learn all about this view router. Let's bootstrap our project. In the terminal, I'm going to say npm space create space view at latest. And with that, I'm going to name it shop-router. And we will not select TypeScript, JavaScript, router, Pinia, ESLint, and Prettier is what I'll select. But whenever you are building your app and you want router, you should select this router. But because we are learning now, we're going to create it from scratch. So with that, in this third option, we don't need anything. And here we are going to start with a blank project. So in the yes, I'm going to click enter. Let's now get that shop router into the workspace. And we need to install router, view router, because that is the third-party package, just like Pinia, just like Vue itself. So in the terminal, I'm going to do npm space I, and we should get view dash router and click enter. With that, our installation is complete, and now I'll get this shop router into my workspace. And now with that, all we have to do is run this. So we're going to do npm run dev, and that then gives us this link where we can visit our app. Now the idea is that to begin with, I'm going to create this views folder, and vi views folder, and in this views folder I'm going to have two views at the moment, so home view and about view. So let's do those. Home view dot view, and here let's add a template, and within this we say h1. We can say welcome to our shop app with view router. And likewise, I'm also going to create an about view. So about view dot view, and there I'm going to say learn all about view router with a shop app analogy. Now in the next video, we're going to create that router, and then we're going to see how we can switch between two views. Let's create the router, and the best place is in this src folder. We create a new folder and we call it routes, and then I think it should be router, not routes, router. And here we're going to create a new JS file, which we will name index.js. Now in this index.js, we need to import certain methods from view router. So we are going to do import, and then we are going to bring in create router from view router, and also we are going to bring create web history. So this create web history, not the create web hash history. So with both of these methods imported, we can proceed. Now here, let's create a variable that will hold this create router object. So we do const router is equals to, and then we are going to say that create router method. Now this method takes two properties to begin with. So in a object literal, we're going to pass two properties. The first one is history, and to this history we simply pass this create web history method. Now this create web history keeps track of all the pages that we navigate around in our application. So then when we click this forward and next button, so back and forward button, we appropriately move to the perfect page, so to say. And after that, we are going to create our routes. And to create the routes, we say routes, and this is equals to an array. Because within this array, actually not equals to, colon, and within this array, we have objects like this, which are individual routes, separated by commas. Now, the first route that I want would be for my home view, and the second route would be for my about view. So let's import those two as well. So let's do import home view, and also let's get about view. So we have about view there. And we also have our router object. And I hope you already know how this router object gets created. Now to use this router object outside, we should also export it out. So we say export default, and then we pass this router object. And with that, our object is now pretty much complete. It's just that we need to configure this home view and this about view in these routes. Let's start with the home view. So in this first object, we're going to add this path property, and we're going to add a path for home. And I want forward slash only for this. And when we visit this forward slash, we want to show some component, and that would be in this component property, and the value would be that home view. Now likewise, in this second object literal, we want to pass a new path, and this would be for forward slash about. And then the component that we want to show would be in this component property, and that would be this about view. With that, our router object is pretty much complete, and we just have to hook it up in the main.js. So in this main.js, let's import our router. So we can do import router from, and this should be @/router/index. And now it's pretty much the same as plugging in Penia. First I'll destructure it. So I'm going to do const app is equals to this create app. So we can mount this app here. And after this create app, we're going to use that router with this app. So we do app.use, and there we pass our router. And with that, our router creation is done, and our project now uses that view router. Next, let's learn how we can show in our app.view two routes, so two router links, which we can click to show a router view. So for example, when you visit Amazon.com, on the top you have many sections, right? You have about and home and so on. So whenever you click one of those, the navigation bar stays there, but the view underneath changes. It changes to certain view that is plugged to that button, whichever you are clicking. So now in this app.view, let's start with a blank template. And first, I want a div to wrap the whole thing together. And inside I'll use a nav. And in this nav, I want to show both of those home and about router links. And this router link is something we need to import from view router. So let's get the script with the setup. And there we are going to import in this curly braces router link from view router. And in this in this nav of the template, let's use it. So let's bring that home and about buttons using this router link. We are going to call this router link, and this router link takes an attribute, that is this to attribute. And to this to, I'm going to pass the path that I assigned for this home view, which is this forward slash. So this forward slash, and just as the content, I'm going to say here home. And with that we now have this home. Now likewise, I am also going to show